I have spent the last week looking through some of my all-time favorite TV series and movies and recreating some little objects from each of them. This was so much fun. I got to share some of my favorite series with you, and let's just jump straight in and see what I built. So we started the week off with the Black Pearl, and this boat, it's literally in its name, the Black Pearl, is quite dark color, so I opted for dark oak wood. Kind of self-explanatory. Now I was a little bit nervous about this because one, I don't have a lot of space, and two, I have no experience with building boats. So I pulled up a reference photo and just tried to get some stuff down. I tried to get the shape using different variation of shelves, and this really helped with some details. I popped some banners for some windows and then black stone for some cannons. Went through with some chains to create some rope and then black banners for the sails as well as some wool. And you can see here I'm making a little skull and crossbones with a Minecraft skeleton. Then what I did was decided to build a bottle. Now this is probably where I made a mistake. I'm not sure whether the bottle was necessary, however, because of the scale it made a lot more sense. So you can see me using blue, glass and cyan concrete, I think it was, to create like the water within the bottle, and then I'm using normal glass, and roughly around here I realized that I didn't like the normal glass. The lines were just too sharp, so I changed it to white stained glass, which is a little bit more subtle. Now this is where I wish I had a lot more room because the neck of the bottle ended up being very stubby and looked very wrong, and the placement of the ship within the bottle, I wish I'd pushed it a little bit further back. But you know, the ship itself was quite cool. I'm just not keen on the bottle, so yeah. Work in progress. So for today's build, I went and had a look at one of my favorite cartoons, Phineas and Ferb. And one of the most iconic parts of this series is Perry the Platypus, so I had to build his hovercard. So I started with basically a quartz rectangle using smooth quartz, and then added a little bit of the flat definition for the bumper and the back. Then went through and lined it with polished tuff because the bottom does have like a grey section, and tried to work on the shaping a little bit more now that it has like a kind of like an M shape in a sense. So I was trying to emulate that as well. Filling in the bottom with some more tuff so that it actually has a solid base and is not just hollow and weird. Doing his little chair in the orange, and then adding little details like the glass, and then his little dashboard, which you can't really see here but is some levers and item frames. Then adding the orange stripe with acacia, using different levels of slabs and stairs to just add that shape and definition, and then adding the two little headlights, which are also acacia. Then for the propulsion unit thingies, I used warped wood and then added glass to make it look like fire. Of course, classic, added some vents, and you know, yeah, pretty straightforward. And oh my goodness, is this a Minecraft platypus? Perry the Minecraft platypus! Of course I had to put the little driver in his little vehicle because it is not Phineas and Ferb without Perry the platypus. And look, there he is! So to be completely honest, I was a little bit scared to start this one just because there is so much detail and it's such a big thing. It is a whole tower. But nevertheless, I started with the base and just used a bit of world edit to help stack cylinders up. And I used mud bricks with a combination of mud and brown mushroom blocks and polished granite to create the texture of the revealed bricks, and then sandstone, birch and normal sand to create the, you know, like the cover, the covering, the whatever it's called. And then I just went through and added a couple more details and then went to town with the leaves. Now with leaves, you kind of can just spam it and it will look more natural if you spam it, whereas compared to if you try to actually place every block. Spamming leaves is more natural because in nature, leaves are kind of a bit chaotic and random. But anyway, I moved on to starting to build the top of the tower, and you can see me going in here and adding a few details with the spruce. Now the thing about Rapunzel's tower is it's very symmetrical, but there is no symmetry in the detailing. So you can see the windows are all slightly off center and off kilt and all of that. But then I used purple, and you know, purple is much harder a block to use, and this build gave me an opportunity to, because the top of her tower is purple, so I got to use purple. I don't know, that just really excited me for some reason. Added some final details, and here are the final shots. I wish I'd made the roof a little bit taller and a little bit pointier, but you know, triangles or cone shapes are really hard, and this was taking a while already. So for today, we were building Sussy from the movie K-pop Demon Hunters. So, funny little story about how I'm doing the eyes. I was watching a Skizzleman stream and Scar was talking about this trick with honey blocks and lanterns behind it to create this much more vibrant color to the glass. And so I tried it out on this and it worked absolute wonders. You can see how much brighter the glass looks now because the honey block is behind it. So would recommend that 100%. This is why I love watching other people's streams and content. You can learn so much, little tips and tricks. But I'm just going around and kind of trying to get this bird shape done. And you can see me here trying to get that middle block. And then I just decide to extend the circle round. I'm just kind of building and then filling in shapes, like blocking it in as squares and then adding little bits to kind of curve it out a bit more. You can see from this angle that it is quite rectangular. And then you can see I've added like 1 or 2 blocks just to create a bit more natural, organic nature to it. And then I went along and did the hat. Now I opted for polished deep slate to add like a slight lighter texture to differentiate it from his head, but also because there's a slight translucency in the hat in the original film, and by having a lighter color you can kind of aid that illusion. Yeah, so here's the final build. I wish I'd moved it up a little bit so I could make his legs a bit more proportionate, but the rest of him looks pretty on point, I think. It's just the legs. So today we were looking at the amazing digital circuits and building the exit door. So of course I had to start with a floor base. So using polished diorite and polished blackstone to create that black and white checked tile, which you can see in a lot of the scenes around the exit door. And then of course I decided to create a bit of depth and variation. I would use red terracotta for the external bit and then red concrete for the internal bit. That way, like, it's not necessarily important, but it allows you to clearly see the two different parts. And then I tried to do the exit sign and realized the white concrete would not work. So I swapped to pale oak trap doors and shelves, and then went through and added a few little gizmos and giblets and to try and make the illusion of that exit sign. And you can see I kind of struggled here with the door handle a little bit, but eventually settled on this design with deep slate and well, it was all deep slate with the wall and the slabs. And then I thought, well, I've got a little bit of time, I might as well attempt to build Pomni's hat. This was kind of a little bit of a train wreck because the shape is so difficult, and especially building on this angle. There's a lot of going back and forth and trying to figure it out, and also trying to get it to fit within my short time constraint. Definitely could have done with a little bit more time on Pomni's hat. But the exit door turned out pretty fine. Yeah, this one, again, I wish I had a little bit more time to work on the hat, but you know, it was pretty cool. So for this day, we were looking at Pokemon, the world of Pokemon and the Pokemon Center. So I decided to opt for sandstone to get the colors. And for the glass, I used a little technique that I'd learned just the other day from watching a Hermitcraft stream. And what they did was they used glass panes at the front and then colored glass in the back to create the lines through it, but also like a nice gradient. So I've used light blue, dark blue, and then lime glass layered. And then I went through and filled out the roof, trying to get the shape right. As you can see, I struggled to get it to look like a curve for a little bit. Went in and filled out the back wall. Swapped the shelves to walls because I think it looked better for depth. And then again did the same with the windows. You can see me adding the panes, the blue glass blocks, and then the lime glass blocks just to add that tealy color to it. And then I went through and did the roof. You can see me here adding just the basic blocks, and then I go over and do the stairs last because that just makes it a little bit easier for me. Fill in the sandstone, and then I work on the back wall, which is just a solid block. Now what you can't see here is I'm just going through and trying to fix the center bit, like the curve and the Pokeball, because I was struggling with it a little bit, but I got it done. This is what it looks like. Oh, I'm noticing now that I didn't actually change the walls and shelves on the other side, so maybe I need to go and fix that. Yeah, that's slightly embarrassing. So for this week, I built the safe from Now You See Me Too, and you can see me using a lot of black for this build because it is quite a dark object. So I'm going around with a base of black wool and adding black stone slabs, and then what I'm doing here is adding some glass because there is a reflective nature to it. One thing that you can do, this trick that I learned quite recently, glass panes, and then glass again. And then in the middle, I did kind of a fog effect again with like a spot of air, and then glass, and then a pillar of black in the middle. And you can see it added quite a cool effect, especially when I put the roof on, the lid on, whatever you want to call it. It just made it look reflective, but also quite foggy and murky. Then I went through with some banners to create the edges and did the top, copied and pasted it over because it is fairly symmetrical, and then went in to do the middle part. Now the middle part is kind of round. Now I do believe this is actually only half of it. I'm pretty sure it is again symmetrical down the back side of what I've built, and it forms 4 quadrants. But within my space and the photos I was referencing, it's very hard to see. So I just did a semicircle, and you're about to see I did a similar effect with the glass, but with blue on the inside. When we cut to the final shots, you'll be able to see it there. But this technique is so cool, like the glass block and then a darker pane, and it's just so cool. But anyway, this was the 4th week actually of my build a day series. It's been so much fun so far, and hopefully I will catch you tomorrow with the next week.